I wanted to make a quick video where I talk about some of my side passions and special interests, uh, aside from music. And yeah, there's so many interests that I have. I made it quite a long video the other day, but it just wasn't focused enough for my taste. So uh, I happen to have an interest in like foreign affairs and the history of U.S. national security. Also because I lived in New York City when 9/11 happened, and at the time it was really very traumatic for me. It also inspired me to make my first video art piece. So I was a video artist before I was a musician, and at the time it was pretty complex learning Final Cut Pro, and mini DV was still the standard then. And my dad is a retired state senator. One of his best friends, Brant Bassett, is a retired CIA spy. And I've tried to get Brant to tell me stories, about his time. But uh, he does his job well in the sense that he just doesn't talk about it. He's a pretty stand-up guy. And I was inspired to talk about these side passions because there's a lot that goes into my music. And I also feel, so like when I was basically in grad school for advanced meditation, like comparative religion, and I was doing like many hours of selfless service and living in ashrams around the world. For a brief time, I was going constantly back and forth to Europe. And then I was living with in the back room at my dad's beach house while he was there working on business. And so like I've heard literally thousands of hours, and that's not an understatement, of political phone calls, and I've been on the floor of the state senate, and I think it's important that I talk about this. For me, I thought, well, do I want to relate this to my music? Well, yes, I do, because for me, reclaiming the term goth is about intellectualism. The average darkwave goth artist is not talking about national security or aviation standards in the history of aviation. And it's not just about like wearing black, and in my opinion, like any true Christian, in my opinion, would never wear a cross. If you've done any deep meditating about whether or not God exists, and you've ever really thought about your life, the last thing you're going to come to the conclusion of is that, no loving God would willingly subject his only son to such a horrific thing. So anyway, that all goes back to my degree in philosophy. One of my few favorite ancient philosophical quotes, a lot of people know this one, is that the unexamined life is not worth living. So anyway, the whole reason I was inspired to do this is that there's some viral former CIA officers who've created brands. I'm not going to name them, but they're all over the internet. I will say one of them is called Everyday Spy. And I just think it's not classy not only not classy, it's not safe. Anyone who really values their life, their limb, their safety, at some point you reach, and I reached it in a unique way, a real profound thankfulness for the United States, especially California. So yeah, like, as I said, I went up to the state capitol. I was on the floor of the Senate, and my dad wrote a famous op-ed called "The Burden of the Bill Factory." It's by Mark Wyland. You can look it up, and the title pretty much says it all. Anyway, music is so much more powerful than meets the eye, and I do believe that the public has been led astray, and I do believe there's a lot of demonic stuff going on in the music industry. I'm not a big conspiracy theory person, but that's pretty obvious. I mean, people make a big mistake when they think that I'm seeking fame because A, I'm an extremely shy person, and B, look at what happens to every great genius artist who achieves some type of fame like that. I mean, they all end up either in a casket way too young or at the center of some horrific controversy. That's definitely not my goal. My goal is to just do what has never been done, basically, and also to, you know, I'm like the ageless vampire of goth music that actually has class, because I don't see any other vamp-inspired, romantic, maybe the first 20 minutes of the film Only Lovers Left Alive, that's like who I am, you know? I mean, my spiritual dad is basically the main character of that movie. That's, you know, but it's kind of a unique and strange thing that I have this retired politician dad who, like, I grew up with mountains of copies of the foreign affairs periodicals all over the house, and like I really am, I got an education behind the scenes that you can't get in any other place. My dad was a Fulbright scholar. He did his master's work at Columbia, and interestingly enough, in the 70s, New York City was so violent when he lived there, he really didn't enjoy his time. But so yeah, my point is, anyone, I'm not saying that the USA is flawless. I mean, it's obvious that we have criminals in every level of government. It's a huge problem. However, we run the risk of extreme, like, in my opinion, both political parties have become so, it's just, democracy is on the line. And I also want to, like, publicly say that the Ferrarilover manifesto outright rejects socialism and brutalist architecture. I mean, look, I think 𝔦𝔫𝔱𝔢𝔯𝔬𝔫 is a great band, but what's unfortunate is you have these really young kids with no real experience. If you've ever lived abroad in a country like Russia, in a socialist bloc, in a brutalist building, you would learn real quick. Actually, I lived in a horrific apartment at one point when I had next to nothing, and I was trying to save money for guitar lessons. It had concrete floors and cinder block walls and pipes running through the place, and it was hell on earth. I mean, it was a total nightmare. So you don't, I mean, I have the credentials to be that hardcore goth, but my point is, goth should not be about romancing horrific things. And socialism on paper sounds great. Everybody has equal rights. Everybody, but in reality, it's so much more complex than that. And at the end of the day, it's a spiritual issue. So I'm going to leave all that political stuff and then just jump over to my passion for aviation. When I saw a documentary, and I truly can't remember where I heard this pilot. It was like a senior, very well experienced military and then commercial airline pilot, and he just straight up said, it was in some documentary, or as I said, maybe in a line getting a smoothie or a coffee or something, but it just shocked. I was in shock to hear, and I've heard of other people in aviation say similar things, but to actually hear it come from the mouth of a pilot, that he refuses to ever step foot in another Boeing aircraft ever again. That is a big statement, because most of the time pilots are trying to allay fears and help people feel more comfortable traveling and explain what turbulence is and all this stuff. And this guy was just straight up, not even just the 737 MAX. I will link it below. There's a fascinating Frontline documentary about Boeing's fatal flaw. And of course it does, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the money. Airbus at the 2011, I think, air show it was, they essentially dropped a bomb and stole American Airlines away from Boeing, because their Airbus, I think it was the A380, I forget the exact model number, it just completely blew Boeing out of the water. I mean, like, so it was like a courtesy call. American Airlines called, or and said, we're going with the competition. So Airbus is a French company. I do speak fluent French, but they have headquarters in the south, and then their final assembly plant for American planes that are, you know, delivered to American customers is in Mobile, Alabama. And I was talking about how the American Southeast, despite the fact that for me, when I say the USA, I'm usually just referring to the coast, like California, New York. But there's a lot of national security stuff that goes on all over the country. And Yeah, they actually moved their headquarters to, I think, Virginia, but then the main headquarters for Airbus is across the pond in the south of France. So anyway, but the bottom line is there was the CEO of Boeing has become basically a marketing guy. He has a business degree. He's not an engineer. The Airbus CEO, as should be with any company that is making aircraft, he is an engineer. And so their obsession with cutting corners is such an extent, it's just an egregious, unbelievable thing that happened. Yes, this happened in third world countries, but there is a system on the Boeing 737 MAX, which was basically the first real update since the 80s. But Boeing 737 planes and the 747 have barely been updated since 1950. So they really call for millions, if not trillions of dollars of investment to actually upgrade the technology to what Airbus is doing. And if you watch a documentary on how an aircraft is built, you realize, I remember the last time I flew up to Frisco, I felt like I was taking my life in my hands, and I was right. Because when I got home, I watched this documentary. I used to fly like it was nothing. The staff was great on the Southwest flight, but the plane felt like a ticking time bomb. So I later found out that the angle of attack sensor, the AOA sensor, it's known to fail on aircraft. Long story short, they didn't give the engineers building the Boeing 737 MAX enough room for healthy debate, nor did they give them enough of a budget to redesign the cockpit, because they wanted to basically have absolutely no funding for simulator training, which is very expensive. But if you think about it, you've basically got a plane with the bones and structure from the 50s, and it's such a cutthroat competitive business market that Boeing agreed to rebate Southwest Airlines $1 million for every single 737 MAX that they purchased that required any simulator training. Essentially, they buried this really terrifying technology that was actually taken, as it usually is, from a military plane called MCAS, which is the thing that responds to the angle of attack sensor and can go haywire. It's a computer system that takes over. And they went out of their way to make pilots completely unaware of this system. So that's why there were 2 fatal crashes really near each other. And I can't believe that they're still flying this plane. That just goes to show there's a lot more going on than meets the eye in terms of money. And it really has become that we have criminals in the government that are putting people's lives at risk. If you're someone that I care about, and there's not very many of you, just kidding. If you're my fan, shout out to you. But my point is, I keep a really small circle. I would never want anyone I care about to step foot in a Boeing plane. All you have to do is watch this documentary. And it's annoying and stressful. The other thing is the fact that people I was talking about these CIA retired guys spilling the beans about national secrets, just kind of like they're hanging out sipping tea with the Kardashians. Like, this is not, I don't even know how that guy, John Kirikow, how did he even get hired by the CIA and this everyday spy guy? Basically what they're doing is they're trying to make a buck, and not just a buck, like they're really, the Everyday Spy website I looked at, it looks like a classic marketing business school ClickFunnels thing. It's ridiculous. And I would love to hear documentaries and information from retired CIA people, but not like that. Not where they're clearly just spinning tales and talking trash, and it's not a good look. There's the Ferrarilover $2 bill. But basically, yeah. And in my other video, I got the angle of attack sensor. My brain jumbled it up with the mass airflow sensor, which is from the BMW N20 engine. Different thing, different type of vehicle. But essentially what can happen with the angle of attack sensor, it's known to fail. There's 2 of them on each plane, and it feeds the information to the plane regarding the potential of a plane going into a stall, which would be a really terrifying thing, but very, very rare in a commercial aircraft, especially one that's been updated, like an Airbus. You're not going to run into those issues. And I'm just praying that we start, rewarding companies that invest in safety and modernization and research. B, start punishing billionaires, because, like, just say, one side of my family is very wealthy, but what used to be very wealthy is like the poorhouse compared to people like the Kardashians. And I'm sorry, like, I'm not even going to say. There are people in music even who have net worths that are just astounding, and they're essentially toddlers banging on drums like apes with millions of dollars at their disposal. That's not the kind of wealth I came from. And so this huge gap in wealth is another reason why, there's got to be an artist revolution at the very least, because there have been people who meet me and they see my stuff and they think I'm just spoiled and I've had stuff all my life. And the reality is, the majority of my adult life, up until very recently, I barely owned anything, and I lived like a monk. And I bring it up simply because money is now corrupting the political process. It's putting people's lives at risk in such a way that it's jaw-dropping. It's completely unacceptable. And talk about destroying America. I used to have to say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, all of that, And I wasn't even raised in a spiritual household. I came to spirituality by necessity. My point is, this sensor on the Boeing plane, and I jump around a lot because I'm autistic, ADHD, and there is not one genius in the history of everything that wasn't autistic, ADHD, by the way. So yeah, I mean, this is all the stuff in my mind. All of this energy can go into my songs. Like, I don't just make random songs that don't have profound meanings. My lyrics can be interpreted in a lot of complex ways. So essentially, MCAS was taken from a military-developed Boeing plane as a quick solution because they were having problems getting the new 737 MAX to be easy to handle in all conditions, and they didn't know what to do if the plane went into a stall. What happens, though, the angle of attack sensor, due to weather, snow, ice, and other horrific global warming concerns, very often, because it's on the outside of the plane, it gives a false positive and it gives the wrong reading. So in those crashes, what happened is you had experienced pilots and one younger guy, one very experienced pilot. The angle of attack sensor sensed the wrong thing. It told MCAS, which is this really, taking from a military plane a very powerful automatic machinery and putting it in commercial aircraft, and then hiding its existence from literally taking it out of the manual and going out of your way to make sure that pilots never get training on it. It's just unbelievable. The America I grew up in, that would not happen. Just period. So anyway, MCAS system goes on, takes over for the pilots. It thinks the plane is in a stall and it pushes the nose down actively. Because if the plane stalls, you got to push the nose down to prevent the crash. However, it's much more likely that MCAS will accidentally get activated when the plane is nowhere near a stall, and then the plane just straight up nosedives. And that's what happened. And I don't mean to be rude. There was a mother in the documentary who said she was going to fly, quote unquote, fly to Africa to get her daughter's body. And I'm just like, she wasn't afraid of air travel until the last 6 minutes of her life. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. And also, this seems to be a very highly educated middle-class family. You should not be sending a 24-year-old woman by herself on a plane to Egypt in 2026. That's just common sense. Also, anyone who dies in a plane crash, their body is not going to be recognizable. You can't, and I'm not trying to be rude, but I have a very high IQ, and I can't even believe they put that in the documentary. Does someone have the heart to say this woman like, you don't want to sound stupid on camera like that. It's just, anyway. Part of it is, too, I've had a lot of people talk to me like I'm dumb. I'm not dumb. That's why I made the videos about my Vassar degree. I know a lot about a lot of things, and my music is very, very profound. And it's absolutely tragic what happened to this woman's daughter, and it shouldn't happen to anyone. At the end of the day, you can find out if you're booking travel. It's very easy to see what aircraft, and I'm just putting it out there. Anyone who's a friend of Ferrari lover shouldn't be caught dead on a Boeing aircraft. That's the least we can do. And the other thing is, you know, we have to, I mean, I could make a joke here. At least Gavin Newsom has some style. I mean, when are we going to have a president that's like somewhat put together? Yeah, I'm a fashionista at heart. What can I say? I don't care if you're a CIA person on a mission. The way you dress says a lot about you. Anyway, this is the way I talk. I have a lot of passions and interests, and one of them happens to be intelligence, and I just, U.S. intelligence, national security, and also because, as I said, I lived in New York City during the attack on the Trade Center. My thesis advisor, 𝔤𝔢𝔯𝔯𝔠𝔢 borradori, her husband worked for Repubblica Italian magazine. Both her teenage kids were on either side of Lower Manhattan, and for about 10 hours, she didn't know if any of her family was alive. She wrote a book with Jacques Derrida, her thesis advisor, and Jürgen Habermas, entitled Philosophy in a Time of Terror. And it just, still to this day, people don't understand what a big deal that was. It still to this day brings tears to my eyes to think about, and I made a really incredible work of art. It was called Twin TV. So I have a passion for video art, and that's how I was able to work for the Orange County Museum of Art. I would love to get a warehouse space and a bunch of CRT TVs and do art, but there is context. There's political context, and I describe myself as an independent. I describe myself as someone who's an intellectual and a goth. Goth really is about being intellectual, because contrasting post-punk and goth music to punk music, the difference is the intellectualism and the intricacies and the delicate way the songs are put together. Same thing, like just a wall of noise and a bunch of Pink trying to recreate Loveless doesn't make shoegaze. Also, one of our favorite artists, who I'm not going to talk about specifically, is constantly being referred to as reinventing shoegaze, which gets old for sure. But at least this person is doing it with class, and they're doing it with very specific, intentional chord choices. And that's the difference. You take someone of a very high caliber artist, and they're making very, very deliberate, unpredictable, exotic sounding, sultry, beautiful chord changes. They're using a lot of different exotic scales and stuff like that in their music, and it's all deliberate and intentional. And my music is intentional. And so essentially, like, every time you listen to my song, you're on Ferrari Lover Airlines, whether you realize it or not, or whether you want to be or not. So I wanted to be a little more specific about some of these details. Like, look at how gorgeous that is. Look at that. And I could go on about, like, any sector of the economy. God, I work hard on these videos, and I'm just like, but I'm a perfectionist, because I was really tired the other day, and I misquoted a couple of things. So yeah, I also, like, I want to inspire other creators out there, and I think I have a duty to the next generation of trad goths. You know, like, I have another interview coming out soon with, I think I'm doing another one with Goth Mojo Mag and maybe another magazine. I really discovered goth, like, when So Alive was all over the radio as a preteen, lovv&rockets. But then I went back to, like, the heart of trad goth when I lived in New York City, right during and after 9/11. I had a 2000 black Honda Prelude was my Batmobile, and I would drive around the city blasting early Bauhaus records and even like Peter Murphy's solo work and stuff like that. And then the Jesus and Mary Chain, I used to play that record a lot on the 405 late at night. Joy Division. By the way, there's just a lot of misunderstandings in general about everything. and people like, dude, I'm remembering it now. In the 2010s, I was always wearing a Joy Division shirt. And then I posted one of my first pictures, like Ferrari Lover, where I was wearing a Unknown Pleasure shirt. And then someone responded, they were like, oh my God, the shirt, which was cool. And then next thing you know, the post-punk revival was like happening and everybody was into it. We forget that the post-punk revival wasn't even really happening for a long time. So I'm glad it has happened, and I just hope that the next generation or whatever, I will always be the new generation. That's something they misquoted. Postpunk.com, you know, they do a lot for our industry or our genre, but we just need more outlets like that. I specifically said I will never be reinventing myself. They got a lot of stuff right in that article, but they got that part very wrong. I don't reinvent myself. It's kind of like every record I make is Unknown Pleasures Part 2, but like different in my own way. And the other thing, Love Will Tear Us Apart is probably the most misunderstood song in the history of everything. Like, goth love songs should not be sad. Basically, that song is about true love, twin flames. The other half of your soul is in another body. So you want love to tear you apart. So you don't have to marry yourself, because let me tell you, don't waste your time. All those big time meditation teachers out there will tell you to spend your entire life meditating and marry yourself. And like, you know, I've been married to myself for many years, and it gets old, it gets tiring. So there's another new reinterpretation. Love will tear us apart, meaning there will be two. Again, in my opinion, the World Trade Center attack was an attack on love itself. And it was even worse because the person in the administration at the time was part of the Skull and Bones Society and had the IQ of a 5-year-old. And yet still I will defend the decisions the NSA made. Trust me, there are some times where you really want the NSA to be able to listen on phone calls. And there is another Frontline documentary, if you're interested, about one of the guys in the NSA who was just like a member of a think tank, and he's just, you know, this grown man bursting into tears because he was trying to tell them that they knew something was going on and they didn't have the clearance. They had the targets. They knew that something was being planned, and they just wouldn't give them the clearance to listen. So if you've got brand new, this is not about racism, but people from enemy countries establishing citizenship and doing shady things, and you can actually prove, I mean, I think they even had a search warrant, but people are too obsessed with not, I mean, you could just watch someone like dying in a fucking terrorist disaster, excuse my language, it's like, well, I didn't want anyone to listen to my phone call. I made the joke the other day, if you listen to my phone calls, all you would find out is that my life is a lot harder than it looks, and there's a lot more that goes into being me, Ferrari lover, than meets the eye. So at the end of the day, if it's necessary, our government should absolutely have the authority to step in and spy on whatever they need to spy on. Anyway, I just, but then we do absolutely need to get the criminals out of the government, especially the White House. I'm not going to go down that road. But me as an artist, like, I guess I'm doing the Lord's work over here. Someone's got to do it. America has embraced Airbus. The other thing we need to embrace about French culture is that French culture worships the arts. There's like, 300 million% more grants available, more public funding, and art in France is worshipped from the time you're a little kid. And that's what we need to do here, like, full stop. That's just where I'll leave it with the bone flower, you know, listen to my music, because it's a matter of national security. It's a matter of life and death. Or don't. Listen to other goth music. Just do it all.